Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown. And one of my subscribers said they had seen the new investigation discovery, a docuseries. It's called the Tetris Murders. If you remember Tetris, that's the game that was so super popular, one of the earliest computer games. I actually never played it, but people just were addicted to it. And one of the co-developers of that, his name is Vladimir Pokhilko. He was on September 22nd, 1998. He was found dead in his home along with his wife and his 12-year-old son. So Investigation Discovery has done a three-part series about this crime. And what about this crime is the reason they're doing the series, you might ask? Well, it was ruled that was a double murder suicide. So he killed his wife and the 12-year-old and killed himself, and the police ruled it that, and the case was closed that many years ago. But suddenly, out of the blue, we have a docuseries saying maybe that's not what happened. Maybe the Russian Mafia killed him because he was involved in Tetris and they wanted some of his money. And so for some reason, they decided to kill off his family because that's what the Russian Mafia does. Okay. So anyway, I went into this thinking, I don't know what kind of evidence they have that this was, first of all, not a murder-suicide. What kind of crime scene evidence do we have that proves it's not that? There was also a suicide note left at the scene. Let me show you the suicide note. Here it is. This is it. I've been eaten alive, Vladimir. Just remember that I am exist the devil. So what he exactly meant by that is questionable, but I've been eaten alive, Vladimir, does make sense because he had his company was crashing and burning at that point in time. His tech company was going into bankruptcy. He's losing everything. Not only was he losing all the money he had, that he was having to lay off everybody there that was also from Russia, and they were going to have to go back to Russia, and maybe even he was going to have to go back to Russia, and his whole life was ruined. So, as does happen sometimes when that occurs, when one's whole life has gone down the toilet, you will see this kind of action, a family annihilation. Now, interestingly, there's this comment made by a professor of psychiatry. His name is David Spiegel. He's from the Stanford Medical Center. He says, business failure could make someone depressed and even suicidal, but not homicidal. I'm not sure where this guy's been, but I can't tell you how many family annihilations come after the husband in the family, the man of the family. Usually it's in midlife. His life just goes downhill. He loses his job, or he spends too much money, and he's got so many financial problems that he kills his whole family, and then he kills himself. Because the concept is, if I'm going down, I'm so embarrassed, I'm so humiliated, I think my life is over, and I don't want people to go on without me, mocking me after my death. Oh, look, he was a failure. I'll just take them out with me, and then I won't have to worry about them. It's not a clear sense of mind, but that's the way it works. So the police did determine that he had killed his wife and son when his business was collapsing, and he left this suicide note that basically says, look at it again, I've been eaten alive. Well, I read that as I've been eaten alive by everything around me, by the financial systems, by the corporations, by whatever. And it's eaten me alive, and I'm done. Well, so you think that would be it, but no. So what happens is Investigation Discovery apparently approaches, and let me tell you how it all works. Many people think that when a production company, a network, decides to do a whole docuseries, that it's because somebody came to them and said, we want this done. It's usually not that way. Usually people go and, oh, please do this, and they don't get any response. What usually happens is that the production company itself searches for controversial things or things they can make controversial. And if they find any little thing, they go, oh, that might work. And they don't necessarily feel they have to prove it. They just think it's something that, will stir something up. Well, look at what Sandra Brown, she's the one who ends up being the major part of this show. And she's in all three, she's basically the number one person speaking. She is the now retired Palo Alto PD crime scene investigator who was at the scene. And this is what she says. A little over 2 years ago, I received a phone call from a former colleague in Palo Alto Police Department, and from this guy named Scott Wong. We had both been lieutenants together. He asked if I'd be interested in revisiting the Pokhilko case that we had worked together in 1998. I was definitely nervous at first by the premise of participating, but then the more I thought about it, I knew I definitely wanted to be a part of this docuseries. I felt excited that someone, decades later, was interested in hearing how we all really felt about that case in 1998. Someone's interested in hearing about that. Yeah, the people are going to make money off this docuseries. So she wants to participate. And let me tell you, people love to be in these things because, especially if they've never been on TV, it's exciting. Oh my gosh, I'm going to be famous. And a lot of times documentaries don't even pay the people to be in them. They get them for free. Even experts like myself, they'll ask if I can do it, and they'll say, "Oh, we don't have a budget to pay you." And I just say, "Well, see ya," and they find somebody else. But sometimes they will pay, but it's not great. And then I'll participate in certain documentaries if it's I can at least get my time covered. But I also want to believe that I'm not going to be edited. I'm not working in some kind of foolish, ridiculous story, which I think this one is. And I'm going to explain why I think that. And it's three parts. It's 2 parts too long. It is long, drawn out, and dull. So there you go, right there. That's the problem. It's got interesting stuff about Tetris, just the history of it. I like that part the best. But then they started trying to explain how this wasn't what it was ruled. It wasn't murder-suicide. It was a hit. It was that the Russian Mafia killed them off for reasons completely unknown, and supposedly staged it as a suicide, which is kind of odd to me because I think I would just stage it as a home invasion, something simple, but not this. And I'll explain how weird this crime is. And what Sandra Brown says is the crime is so weird to her, she immediately thought something smelled. She said that, and her spidey senses went off. You're not supposed to use spidey senses if you're a detective, but her spidey senses went off. Things bugged her. She didn't like the way the blood spatter pattern was, but it's never explored in the show. So I don't know if she knows anything about how blood spatter patterns should look in that instance. I don't know how they didn't describe any of this in the show. And then there was the issue about how he held the knife in his hand. She said that was wrong too. So I just knew something smelled. She says that a lot during the show. So let me explain how the crime went down. So the wife was in a separate bedroom from her husband. They slept in separate bedrooms. Not saying that had anything to do with the relationship. It's just maybe their comfort level. What they bring onto the show, by the way, are a couple friends. And the friends are like, "Oh my gosh, they were the happiest couple ever." And then you find out, and one other little part, that there was some arguing going on. Maybe over the fact that Vladimir's company was tanking, and they were going to have to, the wife was running a yoga studio, and they might all have to go back to Russia, and she probably wasn't a happy camper. And I don't know how much of it was her husband's fault. If he was not doing well with it, maybe she blamed him. I don't know. But so the friends are going, "Oh no, they're happy." Anyway, so the wife is found in her bed, and she has been beaten with a hammer in the head and stabbed. The son in his room has also been beaten with a hammer and stabbed, but with a different hammer. Both hammers from the house. And then Vladimir is found next to his son's bed with the knife in hand, okay? And he's lying on the floor like this. He hasn't been beaten in the head. Although there will be a guy here who will come in and he will explain, this guy, Dr. Michael, what's his name? Arnall, a forensic pathologist. And here's something else these shows do. They bring in somebody who will say what they want them to say. Because in this case, they're not going to bring anybody on board who's going to say, no, that's not what it is. It's this. No, they're going to get somebody who's going to back the Russian Mafia story, and that this was a triple murder. Okay, so he comes in and he talks mostly about the knife. And there, by the way, there was no breaking and entering in the home. There was no sign of anybody else in the home at all. Usually when you have somebody come in and commit a crime like this, you're going to have some evidence that there was an intruder. That's not there. There were no fingerprints supposedly around, except the family's. Well, okay. There was no, the hammers were supposedly, there was blood in the sink, like things have been wiped down at some point. So there weren't any fingerprints on the hammers. There was some documents that were burnt up. Then there was this note that was left. And one of the things that has been said is that, well, why would Vladimir use two different hammers to kill his family? Why wouldn't he just use one hammer? Okay, that is interesting. Why would somebody coming in to stage this crime use two hammers? Why are they using two hammers? Why don't they use one hammer? And that if you can say it for him, you can say it for somebody else as well. And they are from his own house. So we're talking about, which is one of the things I find frustrating when you have people say, oh, this didn't happen that way. You have a person whose mind is so messed up that he's considering suicide and murdering his family on the way out. You don't have somebody who thinks we're super, super logical, even though this was a guy who was, heavily into computer stuff. His mind doesn't necessarily, what he's thinking and going through, we do not know. He was also supposedly highly sleep deprived. And he had also worked in sleep deprivation studies where you just never get more than 2 hours sleep a night. You do things like that. So was this guy super sleep deprived? Was he going into a psychotic kind of state? And why he picked the way he did things, who knows? Maybe he wasn't actually planning to commit suicide. He was going to kill them and then run away. So he burned up some stuff and he washed up some stuff. And then he thought, oh, what am I thinking? I can't go anyplace. And he wrote the note and killed himself. I don't know. I don't. But I do not see, there is no evidence that they presented in this entire documentary that anybody else was involved. And then let's go to the knife thing that they talk about. So the knife is, okay, I'm going to use this. It's not a sharp knife, as you can see. This is the dull side, and there's little teeth that are going to be the so I put it to show it here well enough. That's going to be the cutting side. Okay, he's right-handed. They said, well, you would think he would grab the knife, have the sharp side, and do this, but he was actually cut on this side of the neck. All right. Is that unusual? Well, I don't know. When you're in the state of wanting to kill yourself, I don't know. Do you think to cut this way? Or watch this. I can flip the knife around, which is the way it was found in his hand. It was found with the sharp side out. He was laying like this. There's nothing that says he can't do this. So they're making this huge deal about the knife. I'm like, and he can't do that? And then Sandra Brown says, oh, well, why was the knife still in his hand? And he says the same thing. Well, if he cut himself like this, he probably didn't die instantly. So why is he still holding the knife? It's not like he had a cadaveric spasm and couldn't let go of the knife. He would have dropped the knife or done something else. Why is it in his hand? And I'm thinking, so you cut yourself like this and you just drop to the floor. Why couldn't the knife be in your hand? I mean, the floor is there. Your hand is there. Well, you had to throw the knife. You had to let go of it. I can't even understand the thinking here. It's like you're trying to make up stuff to say it could be something else. And so that's what he says. He doesn't actually deny it could be a suicide. He just says, on the other hand, you can't say it's not a homicide. All right. So they don't like the way the scene looks, but there's no proof of anybody else being in the house. And there's a suicide note. Now they're trying to say, oh, the Russian Mafia made him write that note. Why? What was the whole point of this? And this is the whole thing that just, talk about something that smells. They've made an entire show based on absolutely nothing. There was never any link between him and the Russian Mafia ever proved or brought up in the show in any way that was actual evidence. There were some Russians in the community who said, oh, that could have been a Russian Mafia. And a friend who goes, well, I don't know. Could have been the Russian Mafia. That's not proof. You're detectives. You can't say that's proof just because you think, well, I don't know why this guy killed himself, even though his life was completely ruined. I mean, he had motive for family annihilation. He had motive. So don't say he couldn't have done it. You just didn't like the way he did it? Well, okay, so he's crazy. He's running around. He grabs a hammer and he goes like this, and he comes back and it's like, okay, now, I better get a knife and finish him off. I'm very sure they're really dead. And then, okay, he's like, who knows what he's thinking and doing? You do crazy stuff when you're crazy, So could he have hammered his wife and child? Yes. Could he have stabbed his wife and child? Yes. Could he have killed himself? Yes. Did he write the note? Yes. Was there any link to any Russian Mafia? No. Did he have motive? Yes. And yet they made 3 hours worth of this series so you can struggle through it. And when you get to the end, there's nothing ever proven. They never did any crime scene reenactments that were actual, really well thought out. They didn't go through all the different evidence and show how he could not have done these things. They alluded to, the FBI was looking into something, and that must mean that he was involved in something. There's no proof. They're just pointing fingers at the FBI, saying, well, see, if they were interested, it must be more than this. That's not good detective work. Sorry. I mean, you can have all the suspicions you want, but if you can't prove anything and none of the evidence supports anything you said, then it's probably exactly what it was to begin with. A double murder, suicide by a man whose life had been destroyed, probably by his own doing. And he was checking out. He was making sure everybody checked out with him. That's the way these things work. So, I wouldn't recommend the series at all. I really wouldn't. I mean, if you're going to watch any of it, just watch the first one and skip the rest of it, because that's kind of just drags on. But I like the part about Tetris because I really wasn't that familiar with it. I thought that was kind of interesting. But not one of the better documentaries out there. But if you want to watch it, have at it. Anyway, I just wanted to bring that up because I was asked to take a look at it by one of my subscribers, and I did. And if you haven't been to the channel before, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel, and check out what other stuff I've got going on here. And I'll see you next time with maybe a better documentary.